car, or
No.
because I can pick you up then. Let's just coordinate.
Yeah, we should coordinate.
Okay.
Yeah, because when are you coming in?
Tomorrow morning tomorrow about noon.
I think that's what time I get in. Let's if it is,
Whatever that
Cool.
was.
well, you probably have a shuttle going over to your.
I can get a shuttle, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The place that I'm staying at is literally like a block and a half away from the airport, so I'll be smelling aviation fuel fumes and
Nice.
takeoffs.
Did you get a good rate?
Yeah, pretty decent.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a really nice rate.
Yeah, it's $100 or $109 or something at our place. So.
Our place is good. I was surprised. All right, let's go live. I think I got everything working. I'm sorry for the delay today, guys. I tried to do something which I never do, which was try to make things look better.
You're just building up the anticipation here, Ak. Everybody's going crazy. They want to hear rumors. They want to hear.
I know. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I thought, okay, you know what I can do? I can set up this other computer. That way I never have to worry about this again, and this will be perfect, and I'll set it up, and everything will be flawless. And, of course, flawless was flawed. I got to get rid of this Abby Wambach haircut I've got now going on. It's like, jeez.
Is there anyone other than me, by the way, who's just bitter at the performance level of the U.S. team?
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you. Let's talk about the U.S. women's soccer for a second in the pre-show.
Please don't. Please.
Oh come on, I want to talk. I'm dying to talk about it. We talked about it a lot last night. We had a game last night, a scrimmage, and we talked about.
They're just not playing well.
They're so one-dimensional right now. It's crazy. I mean, and they're
no creativity.
No creativity.
They're playing so bad that Canada might beat them. Oh wait,
they're depending entirely on their defense and their goalies.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with being a defensive-oriented soccer team, but this is an American team that traditionally plays pretty creative soccer up front, and right now it looks like we're trying to feed our 35-year-old, one-time great but not quite so great anymore striker. And
did Mia Hamm come back?
No, Abby Wambach is definitely she's a great soccer player and still a great soccer player, no question.
But it's just not the same, and the world is better now in soccer. So I think in the olden days that might have been enough, but I think you have to do more now to score. It's not so different than the NHL. It's harder to score a goal now in the NHL than it was even 5 or 6 years ago, and it's harder to score a goal in women's soccer than it was 5 or 6 years ago. I mean the Olympic gold medal in Atlanta that got the Americans started, that was 20 years ago now. So
I know. And they look, this is the last thing we'll talk about soccer. I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of women's soccer. And the Friday night's the next game during the draft. It's crazy. But yeah,
that goal that the Japanese scored last night, a la Mario Lemieux between the legs, not touching the ball. It was unbelievable. That should be our segue into hockey.
All right, there you go. But, that's awesome. I love it. This is Peter Tessier, by the way, joining us from lovely Winnipeg.
Do you remember the defenseman that Mario turned into a pretzel?
I want to say Chelios, but it wasn't.
No, it was against Minnesota.
Oh, that one. Oh,
yeah.
Geez. I was thinking the Olympic game when he let it go through the legs from Korea.
I'm talking about the one in the Stanley Cup final against Minnesota. I think it was Sean Chambers. I think that's what the defenseman was.
It sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sean Chambers. He was a good Stratomatic player for a while there.
And then he beat. I think it was John Casey was the goalie.
Oh, of course, yeah, that's a famous one. You definitely remember that. That's for sure. All right, well let's do
it.
Let's get started. Now that I've got this great setup that's working really well. 20 minutes late. All right.
Just follow me on the intro.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday. It's June 24th, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast /RumorCast today on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and this is the day before we all head to Florida, except for you, Peter. You got to stay in Winnipeg.
Someone's got to stay up north and keep an eye on it.
But the three of us are heading to Florida tomorrow, and we're doing a podcast.
Pretty much everybody in Canada is going to.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it is an invasion.
The funny thing is, I think everybody's going to be on the same flight that I am because of the plane flight costs going from Toronto to Florida. A lot of them fly through Buffalo, so I think everybody's going to be coming down for the early flights out of Buffalo down to Florida.
It was so expensive that this time I'm driving to Baltimore to fly down to Fort Lauderdale. I have to drive, which is not terrible. It's a 2-hour drive, but that it saves a good $400 to do it. So.
Before we launch into our rumors and everything, I would love for our viewers to chime in on this too, because I've been debating with, and apparently I'm in the minority on this, but most of my colleagues feel differently. But I always feel the draft wraps up the current season because the draft is based on your standings in the previous season. The 2014-15 seasons determine your draft order. So I feel that sort of wraps up. And then when you sign free agents, because you're signing them forward, it marks the beginning of the next season. I've always sort of thought that in my head. Not that it's a big deal, but I've been talking about this with my colleagues, and they all view free agent signing as the completion of this season. You finish this season.
See, I'm the opposite. I think the draft is the beginning of the next season. I think the season ends when the Stanley Cup is handed out. That's my theory. Like the Stanley Cup is handed out.
That's the third option. That's a different option.
Because that seems like the natural. That is what all this is about, right? You get to the end, someone lifts the Stanley Cup, and it's over, and everybody starts over.
There's logic to that as well. Yeah.
The funny thing is,
especially now in this day and age where the draft is becoming like my wife was she texted me today like about an hour ago and said I love her soul there, she's a wonderful woman, but texted me can you take our son to an orthodox appointment this afternoon, and I'm like all I had to do was text back trade deadline mode. I'm in trade deadline mode, and that's all you had to, and this didn't used to be like that. I mean, the draft I think now is more interesting than the trade deadline, and I think we're at a point where we have much more going on than we had going on before the trade deadline.
The funny thing is, to your theory, Kevin, the fact that now there's the 5-day window before July 1st that starts tomorrow, it sort of blurs the lines between the ending, the draft being the end and the free agency being the beginning, because we're going to have free agency talk tomorrow because these teams will be able to start talking to free agents.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for that. It doesn't really matter.
I always love this because we're just talking the other day about 12-month a year sports, because our soccer team is the same way, and you have to sort of decide an end of this year, like this is when we end, this is when it ends.
I tell you how everything has changed. Like I used to put my free agent list out, a few years ago. I would put it out on the the 31st or the 1st. And now I do my first one in December, of the previous, I put my first 2015 free agent list out last December is when I did my, take one, and then I put another one out during the playoffs, and I'll do another one, Sunday. And, all of them will be different because, obviously players have signed, and now, like, one of the best free agents is a kid that wasn't even on the radar. Riley is, because he is not... decided not to go to Columbus, and he's a free agent. We have to treat him as just like any other unrestricted free agent. So. Oh yeah, no, he's a UFA, and we're going to get buyouts. They're going to get more UFAs. So let's really quick before we get into the rumors, because we will talk plenty of rumors today, because I've got some good ones to discuss. Let's talk about this whole 3-on-3 overtime and the challenge. It's more of a summer topic, but I want to just give a brief thought on it. My first thought on the 3-on-3 was I was proud of the GMs for just going for it. Like, I thought the 4-on-4 halfway through, then 3-on-3 was kind of wimpy, and I think the 3-on-3 is going for it. I'm proud of the NHL. I think that's a very good move. It's a proactive move. It's not as good as getting 3 points for a regulation win, but it's a good move. It's still a good move that moves forward. Kevin, your thoughts on that one? Well, I like the 4-on-4 than 3-on-3. I mean, the AHL system works. Well, but I understand the players' complaints. They didn't want to go to the 7-minute. These are finely tuned means, and I think they're being truthful when they said that they believe that it'll be more taxing on the top players in the league. And it makes a lot of sense to me. But saying all that, I'm fine with 3-on-3. I like the shootout, keeping it in the game because fans like it. And I think this should be about the fans, so let's keep the shootout. But I think even the fans who do like it believe that we have too many of them. So let's just do what we can to reduce the number. And I think this is going to make the shootouts even more interesting because they'll become rare. And now they're talking about, with going straight to 3-on-3, they're talking about perhaps somewhere between a 66 2/3 and 75% results, before we get to a shootout. And I think if that happens, that's a pretty good. I would say that's a good percentage. If you could have 1 in 4 games that go beyond regulation, go to shootout, I think that would be exactly what we want.
I like it. Peter, what are your thoughts?
I like it a lot. I also think what's going to be fun to watch with this is how are coaches going to coach when you get in within that 5-minute time period in a tied game before the end of the game, because there are going to be some teams that are going to have 3 or 6 players that they can combine on the ice for 3-on-3 that are going to absolutely thrive in that kind of space. And it may be more of an advantage for some teams to get to the overtime and play 3-on-3 than it will be to just try and hang on and win it in the final.
Great point. I mean, this might actually be. I really hadn't thought of that, but this might be a bigger advantage. Like, there were definitely teams that used to play for the shootout. Now we think teams might be playing. You might be right.
Well, the issue with that is that, and this is a good thing, I think, is what this does is it helps the most skilled teams. And isn't that what we want?
Yes.
If you're an offensively skilled team, this plays right in your hands. So, the teams that are defensive minded, this doesn't help them. This helps teams with the pure skill.
I think the goaltenders union wants to put a stay of execution on this because I think they're not going to enjoy it very much. I also think and I understand why the NHLPA didn't want to go to a 7-minute 4-on-4, 3-on-3, but I saw it in a couple instances in the AHL last year. It worked. I think it's a little bit petulant that it's 2 minutes. I mean, it really is not that big of a deal. But I'm not somebody who has to play those 2 minutes, so maybe that's that's consideration. But I think it's going to be really entertaining. I've seen 3-on-3 in some exhibition games over the last couple of years. It was really quick, giving a lot of room and a lot of room for creativity for some of these talented players. So I think that people who don't like the shootout are going to like the fact that a lot of games are not going to be resolved by the shootout.
I think goalies are going to like this.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun for them. I mean, they can't face any more pressure than they already were. I mean, so pressure's not an issue, and still one goal is going to decide it. So it's either going to be your team or the other team. So it doesn't change for them. I mean, unless you're arguing that they're going to face more shots, which is probably true, but most of them enjoy playing a pretty high-paced game. So I think goalies will like it.
Can you play defensive 3-on-3? Peter, sorry to interrupt, but can you play a defensive 3-on-3? Can you literally shut down for 5 minutes another team on a 3-on-3 defensive?
Yeah. Well, I had this conversation with Matthew Schneider, and I'm not going to argue with him. He played 2 decades in the league, and he said, he'd been around and played enough and been with enough coaches to know that the coaches are going to try to manipulate this. And if you want to play conservatively, you can keep 2 guys back. I mean, what happens in 3-on-3? It's a series of 2-on-1 breaks. Right. That's what generally happens if you play it the way it's ebb and flow. You break down, you're 2-on-1. If the goalie makes the save, boom, it's going the other way. And of course, because it's a 2-on-1, they've got 2 up. So now they're going to be 2-on-1. So, but if you want to prevent that, you play 2 defensemen, you stay back, and you. Have those guys being late on the attack.
If you've got a goalie who can puck handle and controls rebounds well, you've got a huge advantage there. The other thing is, what about the long change? Are they keeping the long change open?
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, gobs of ice room.
Yeah, the long change does affect it too. That's a really good point. All right, moving on quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on the rules today. We'll definitely discuss this at length in the summer. We can have an entire week dedicated to 3-on-3, but I think which we won't do, but we could. But what I think we should start with next, I do want to talk for a second about the coaches challenge because I think they're making a huge mistake the way they're dealing with this. I think that they are trying to do the NFL thing. I'm okay with coach's challenge, but my issue with the timeout is I think it's almost like a specious argument that they're making here. I think the timeout in the NFL is completely different. When you have 3 timeouts and a half and you give up a timeout to challenge, that's different than having 1 timeout in a game. And why, to get the call right, must you risk a timeout? I don't see this as – I see these arguments as differing, and I don't understand the logic behind this. I know that you could say, okay, they could challenge all the time, but limit it to one challenge a period, or limit it to one challenge a game. But just, or introduce the one icing timeout or whatever, where you get to change because what I like about the timeout now, I like the strategy of the fact that, the timeout's being used a lot because you have tired guys on the ice that need to change after an icing.
Or you could do the timeout, the challenge, and if you are penalized, you lose your timeout, and if you challenge again and you don't have a timeout, you get a 2-minute penalty for delay a game.
Something like that, but I agree. I don't. Kevin, do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I think.
And the GM see what you're saying as well. I mean, that was discussed, and I think everyone feels as you do that they don't want to see the loss of that. The coaches use that timeout pretty effectively, just as you articulated, and they were concerned about that. And what I would guess is this: that what they decided is, let's see what happens with it, because I think there's a feeling that the coaches aren't going to use this unless they're sure anyway. Because really, that's what we're trying to prevent. These sure things that they don't really see, that it's pretty obvious that the coach can say, "This, just look at it." So then you wouldn't lose your timeout. So I think if I had to guess, and I really am guessing here, I would say what they've decided in their own minds is, let's see it for a year and see what happens. See if it's used so much that the coaches lose their timeouts. Because all the GMs, when this was first discussed, brought up exactly the point that you did, that they're concerned about that, because everybody thinks that timeout was one of the better ideas that we've had in a long time.
Yeah, I love timeouts, and I wish that, I'm, as again, going to bring soccer up again, but one of the things I wish there was in soccer. I wish there was a timeout in soccer at times. I do like the idea that a coach, and being in the Laviolette world for a while there, he was incredibly effective at using it, and used it, once 35 seconds into a game, So it's just that was a little insane, but still, this is all. Yeah, so I'm.
Let me tell one little soccer story just because it reminded me of that. I coached some travel soccer years ago. My wife was a high school coach. My son and daughters played at a high level, and I got involved. And I basically was mentored by a guy that ended up being a college coach. And I remember him telling me when I first got started, he goes, "Now here, I'm going to share the dirty little secret that nobody talks about, but as everyone understands, is once the game starts in soccer, you can't coach a lick,
right?
Because there's no time to get your players together, and
right.
You got to do all your coaching the day before or in the pregame, because it's impossible. And then at halftime you can make an adjustment, and that's what ends up happening. That's why the second half and soccer looks so much different than the first half, because it's like the NFL where you make adjustments then.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and that's frustrating at the kids' soccer level, because you would like to be able to bring them off and say, okay, this is something that's but anyway, moving on.
Uh-oh.
It is. Okay, I thought it was just me, but it's Zach, eh?
Yeah, he's frozen up here. Well, let's move to what Ack just wrote about in his blog, and there's been a lot of talk over the last 24 hours regarding the Arizona Coyotes with the 3rd pick. Numerous reports saying that they have at least 2 offers to trade down from the number 3 pick. I know that Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet speculated that one of the teams was Columbus, and if you look at teams like in the top 10 who are looking for defensemen, either Noah Hannafin or Ivan Provorov, those Columbus and Colorado at number 10 look to be the 2 teams that are probably would have the assets to move up to number 3, and definitely need to add a young defenseman who can potentially be a quarterback. Kevin, I mean, I don't know if Don Maloney is serious about moving the number 3 or moving down, but I think there's a possibility here, and I think there are a number of teams who could step up and make that deal. What do you think?
I would agree, and I think there's a lot of logic to why those teams would come up. And let me make the case for and against Maloney doing that. The case for is that Hannafin is not Ekblad. Hannafin is going to be a very solid, dependable. Jerry York, in my story today, the coach of Boston College, said you'll plug him in and he'll play 20 years in the NHL. He's going to log minutes. He's going to be solid, but he's going to be a Ryan Suter type. He's not going to be an Ekblad type. So he's not that dominant player. I mean, Suter's is an excellent player,
yeah.
But he's not that dynamic offensive guy, and he can log a lot of minutes. So and they have Ekman Larsson. Now that's the case for the thing. The case against it is you move down, you don't get Dylan Strom. And in my opinion, the Coyotes are desperate to improve their offense. Plus, it's the Western Conference. Those centers out there are big boys, and they need a big boy to compete against the Anaheim Ducks of the world and everything else. So unless you're getting a center back, a young center, so I don't see a good fit for Columbus in that regard. And Colorado, I mean, are we talking Riley? Is this the Riley deal?
It could be O'Reilly. I mean, Columbus has the 8th pick. They're shopping a young kid like Kirby Reichel. He's supposedly somebody that they want to move. They have 3 second-round picks in this draft, and we know
that's not nearly enough. Yeah. I mean, O'Reilly to me, then now you're starting to get in the, if you're talking O'Reilly and Colorado's 9th pick, because in that 9th pick, Werenski could still be available.
Right.
So I mean, you could end up, if you could get that, and then maybe a second-round pick goes back to Colorado. Now suddenly we got the makings. Like that deal, I don't mind.
I agree. Peter,
isn't the concern with O'Reilly the fact that everyone wants to know what he's going to sign? And that makes him such a wild card in any trade variable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I mean, that's a big payoff.
Yeah, but I just had this discussion with the general manager, and I'll make the same argument to you that I made with him. Isn't that always the case? Like, everybody acts like this is like the new phenomenon, but always in these situations, it always comes down to can you get the guy tied up? Right. So it's not just O'Reilly. This is the way this generally works out. So. Yeah, I mean, that is a major factor.
Guys of O'Reilly's age aren't usually being moved around, right? That's the difference. Like, if it was a guy who was 29 or 30 and had a year left, and he's like, well, if I lose him, it's worth the gamble maybe. But O'Reilly's got a decent future ahead of him, and you want to sign him. That's sort of the difference here.
Well, yeah, but you're still going to want to talk to him, whether the guy's 29 or 24. So my point is, if you're going to make that deal, it's obviously has to be dependent on you talking to his agent.
Yeah,
absolutely. And worse comes to worse, if Arizona, say there's a deal between Colorado and Arizona, and O'Reilly goes to the Coyotes. If he balks at the Coyotes' offer of a long-term contract, they can still flip him at the deadline and get assets back for him. So it's not like they're going to lose him out for nothing. The thing is that O'Reilly, in a sense, he doesn't have a no trade in his contract, but if he doesn't want to go someplace, the team is not going to give up significant assets for a 1-year fix, for a 1-year fit. They want this guy long term. They're going to want to sign him to a long-term extension, and if they can't do that, then his value to them goes down significantly.
Now it's interesting. What's interesting here is I was cut off when you started this discussion. Sorry about that. But you mentioned 2 teams, Colorado and Columbus, Mike, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been searching, and I found 4 other teams, not Colorado or Columbus. So, I mean, in talking to people, 4 teams I talked to a couple assistant GMs, I talked to 1 GM, I talked to a few scouts, and these are the teams that they thought were involved in this. And the first team that came up was Tampa. And the feeling here is that this could be the Jonathan Drouin deal. and that that Jonathan Drouin could be part of something that would move on. Kevin, you immediately winced at this.
Oh, I mean, how does that help them? How does giving up Dylan Strong again and Drouin help them?
Drouin plus other things, but the idea here is that that was the thinking on that. The second one I came up with was Boston, actually. And I I didn't nail down names here or anything like that. It wasn't like Lucic would be involved in this or anything like that. I that was what I was told. It's not Lucic, but there's other names, and Boston has some talent. Perhaps Boston. That was the second name. Third name was Toronto, which of course always comes up in these situations. And the fourth was the Islanders. Who and Garceau really wanting to, and the idea of Okposo being available. Seems to be the X factor with the Islanders. If Garth is willing to move Kyle Okposo, Okposo versus Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah, but here's the thing though, and those could all be true. But my point would be, the first two teams we talked about, there's logic behind all those because you still get a good young player, and
right.
that you get some other help, so you're getting more. Now, in the cases that you're talking about teams that are going to be lower in the draft, so you're not getting that guy. I mean, Drouin is still going to be an exciting player, but I think I'd rather take my chances with Strom, and he's not a slam dunk either. There's a lot of people that think, is the skating good enough? So.
And that's the reason why they might be open to trading the pick, because according to and there was a report by Craig Custance from ESPN, he was saying that Arizona is very high on like the first 12 players in this draft. So not to say they don't see a difference between a Matthew Barzal and a Dylan Strome, but if they're getting enough to trade down from 3 to say 8 or 3,
right,
then they're adding 3 or 4 assets. Don Maloney, that's a conceivable move that makes a lot of sense. With the teams that you were mentioning, Eck, the Islanders don't have a first-round pick in this draft, so neither does Tampa Bay. I mean, I think Drouin, I think he's an attractive commodity, but I don't know whether a team is going to move a third pick in 2015 for a third pick in 2013, which I think was a significantly weaker draft than this one. Toronto they're not going to trade significant assets to move up one slot, and their other first-round pick is at 24. So you're talking about trading half the Leafs roster to get up to number 3 to have back-to-back first-round picks. So I think it's more likely that they trade down within the top 10 and get themselves a good first-round pick, still can get themselves an impact player, and maybe 1 or 2 or 3 assets more. If they do that, that's a move that's constructive for Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the pieces here, so I mean, it's hard to sit there and argue with these points because I don't know the pieces, right? Like I've just been told that.
But we know enough of their rosters to know. I mean, all we're arguing is not the specifics of the deals, but what makes sense in a general philosophical way. Because I agree with everything Mike just said.
Yeah, I know. There's a definite logic.
The only thing I would argue with Mike about a little bit is when he talked before about the O'Reilly deal, and I'm intrigued by that because if you're getting 2 elements as part of that deal, if you're going to get their number 9 pick and you're going to get O'Reilly as part of the deal, and they're certainly not going to give that up to get the third pick. There would have to be something going back. But if you're going to do that, you're going to get that. But I disagree with Mike about, just as I said yesterday, that if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you don't have to worry a lick what your fan base thinks. I think in Arizona, you really have to worry about that. And so if you can't just say, well, I'll take O'Reilly, and if it doesn't work out, we'll trade him at the trade deadline. That's not an option for the Arizona Coyotes, in my opinion.
Let me ask a different
Let's
question.
get Peter's thought on this. Peter, I wanted your thought on this.
I think one variable you can look at too with the Coyotes as well is, although they're giving up something, you could expand a deal any bigger with a team who needs to get rid of a bad contract. They need $18 million to hit the cap floor, just to hit the floor. So, as I was saying earlier about O'Reilly and what he signed there, they could pay him the moon and it wouldn't make a difference. They have to hit the floor.
Yeah, and who's going to sign a long-term deal to sign in Arizona with the way that team in terms of where they're going to go in the next year?
So maybe, if you're Columbus, maybe it makes sense to ship out Jack Johnson. That's an ugly deal.
Or Anaheim with James Wisniewski, or
there are a lot of players out there on iffy deals that could really affect things in terms of if Maloney says we're open for business and we'll take some dollars back because we need to take some, that puts a variable in there that changes how a deal could go down.
Well, yeah, but when you take contracts back, you expect players in return. So and they're giving up an asset. So
No, it expands it out though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's we don't know enough of what's happening. Part of this does feel a little bit like Dale Talon last year with Ekblad to me. Remember, because the first two picks are obvious, right? We know what's happening. Last year, Ekblad was obvious, but not completely. And then there was stuff like, oh, is he going to trade the pick? And Talon was playing around a little bit. And although, at the end of the day, it was saying, he never was playing. But rumors were flying that Dale Talon was talking to people. It was pretty crazy, right? So a little bit of this feels like that. This is the first variable in the draft. The first two picks are obvious. We're looking at the first variable. So Maloney's having a little bit of fun with that, I think. I think he's like, okay, I've got the...
Here's what I wondered, too.
Yeah.
If I was Don Maloney, one of the things I thought about the other day is I'd go to Toronto and I'd say, look, you obviously probably don't really want to stand up there and pick an American defenseman. Just the optics of it all.
Right.
I'm sure they would. Again, because they don't really have to worry about any of that. I mean, he's going to be a pro for a long time, and he's going to be a good player. But so, what would you give us just to move up to 3? And they'll give him something. Sure, they would. I don't know what it would be. I don't know what would be fair. But I think Toronto would like the option of taking Dylan Strom, or maybe they like Mitch Marner or whatever. I'm pretty sure they would like to go up to 3 rather than be at 4. So they make that deal. Now they're at 4. Now let's just say Toronto takes Strom, and now they've got the Hanifin deal. But they'd rather probably need a forward. So they go to Carolina and say, would you rather be at 4? And they get a little bit there, and you keep sort of moving down till you get to maybe you want Kyle Connor. I have talked to a scout who believes that Kyle Connor has a chance to be, anyway, after Eichel and Connor McDavid, the best forward in this draft.
Well, that's what the Islanders did in 08, Kevin. They had the 5th pick. They traded down with Toronto 2 slots to 7. Then they traded down again. They ended up with the 9th pick. They accumulated extra picks, and they drafted Josh Bailey 9th. So that's possible, but the thing is, what is to say that Brendan Shanahan just doesn't say to Arizona, okay, well, you clearly don't want to take Strome if you're trying to trade the pick to us, so go ahead and take
that's the game of chicken,
right?
Well,
you're arguing a hypothetical when I'm just throwing out a hypothetical. I mean, what I'm saying is you just ask him. If he doesn't want to do it, then you still have the 3rd pick. Like, there's nothing lost, maybe he won't want to
allow you to swap picks. I mean, if you throw him Kadri, does that allow you to swap the 3rd to 4th pick? I mean, now,
if I'm Toronto, I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's not worth it. But I mean, my point is you call and you ask. But I think those scenarios that you brought up, those first 2, are interesting. And I think if I'm the Arizona fan base, I'm interested in that. I think if I'm Don Maloney, I'm interested in that. And again, I don't know what their scouting list looks like, but I think everybody you talk to says, there are going to be 10 or 11 guys that are really good here. Yeah. So if you could end up with 2 guys who could help you, plus, or 1 guy can help you, plus one of those 12 guys, Now, I've heard, from a pretty good source that Carolina actually may be interested in taking that let's see, who was that? The Russian kid, from the Brandon Wheat Kings.
Yeah.
So and see, there are 3 really good defensemen: Hanifin, the Russian kid from Brandon, and then Werenski from the University of Michigan.
Yeah, and then it drops off.
Right.
Right. It does. All right. Let's talk a little bit about some trade rumors here too, because we got some of those going on as well. And the one I was really interested in is I heard a good Jeff Skinner one, and Skinner's been it was obviously was such a powerful rookie, such a good player for a long time. And then the last couple years or so, you start starting to hear rumors about Skinner being moved out of Carolina for whatever reason. And I've heard the Los Angeles Kings tied with Skinner on multiple occasions. And then yesterday, 3 sources tell me that that's again being discussed. Don't know what could go back. Do you think? Let's first get Kevin, then Peter. What are your thoughts on Skinner?
Well, I think he is a guy they would move, and I think they want to reinvent their team a little bit, and I think he's a guy that you can get something for in return. I think it would be a standard hockey deal, and I think they're sort of building their team around Justin Falk back there on defense. The fact that I'm hearing that they're going to take one of the defensemen at 5, so they're going to build their team around these 2 young defensemen. So, it makes some sense. I think, and I don't know where they are with Eric Stahl, but I think what he tells them is really going to play a role in their decisions and what happens at the draft. Like if they feel they can't get him re-signed, then they have to be a little more aggressive on the rebuild. And if he's going to stay.
Yeah, Peter.
This is kind of a tough one. I mean, when you think about LA and acquiring some of Skinner's nature, you sort of shudder at the thought of it if you live out here in the West. but what do they? Does it make sense for them to do it? Like what do they have that they can give up that's not going to weaken them too? I mean, LA is such a confusing entity to me because here they are, a team that looks almost as good as Chicago on any given night, and then they sort of have risked falling off the map. They won the Cup the year before. They almost didn't make. They skidded into the playoffs. They missed the playoffs this year. Do they need a big tweak, or do they just need something? Do they just need some rest? I find them such a fascinating element in what they do, and they also have cap problems.
Right.
So they're going to be giving up. They got to get rid of something to make that work with Skinner.
Right. I mean, conceivably they can buy out Mike Richards. The cap hit on that would be like $1.2 million for 10 years. But I don't think you're ever going to find somebody to take on that contract at $5.75 million. But unless you can move a Dustin Brown type of contract or something of that nature, or the Voyanov contract ends up just going away because of him getting deported or whatever happens at the end of that situation. I mean, I don't know how they take on Skinner at $5.725 million for 4 more years. I understand the reason why, because he's a water bug. He's extremely fast. He's got a lot of skill, and to add him to Kopitar and to that group and Carter and that group of talent, it makes a lot of sense. I just don't know how they fit him in.
Well, the name that came up in this one was Dustin Brown, and that sort of surprised me to a degree, but then again, maybe it shouldn't. And I talked to a couple people in LA, and they said weren't surprised by it. From afar, I'm thinking Dustin Brown's the captain of 2 Stanley Cup champion-winning teams, but people around the team say, well, they could move him out of there. He's not. He is. He has sort of fallen off a little bit in his play. You agree with this, Kev?
I do. Yeah. I mean, his play has slipped. Is he just not as productive as he was in the past? I mean, I think he still does the little things and plays the physical game that. That makes him the most desirable, but they haven't got as much offensive production out of him as they did, prior to him signing the long-term deal. And the argument for making a trade like that is, you tried to stay the same and you didn't even make the playoffs. And so now I think the feeling is, especially if they're going to lose Williams, well now maybe we need to change the dynamic a little bit. Yeah. And obviously he would do that, and he would give them a little more offensive, excellence, and they'd just be a little bit different team than they were before. But Dustin Brown is the heart and soul of that, aggressive postseason behavior. He's always among the leaders in hits, and so that and he is the leader. So I think it would take some courage to do that. It just seems to me, if they're going to trade Skinner, there are a lot better options for him than LA. So
yeah, and Dustin Brown 7 more years at almost $6 million, and he's 30 years old. I don't know if, you're talking about Carolina, who, we've heard over the last couple months is that they're a budget team, that Karmanos doesn't want to spend money, and they would do almost anything to get rid of Alex Semon's contract for the last 3 years that totaled $21 million. I can't see them taking $6 million for 7 years for a 30-year-old Dustin Brown when Skinner is 23 years old, and the only concern about him right now is the concussion issue. Now, if they're trading him, maybe they know something that other teams don't, but I think he's a talent, and I think he can bounce back. Maybe, it doesn't work for me, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right, because they won't give you. They can't really afford even to pay Eric Stahl.
Right.
So how are they going to afford, Dustin Brown? So
right.
But again, you can't completely rule it out, because you don't know what else. Would they take one of? Of course, they can't really take any contracts either. But it's.
They might have someone who takes Semin off their hands, though. It might be a different situation where they figure out that. If they figure out Semin, which seems like an impossible thing to figure out, but if they do figure it out.
I just can't see anybody taking it. Even if they would take half of it.
Are there any GMs in psychiatric hospitals? Because that will be the team that takes back Alex Semon's contract.
Right.
And the only way I can see a team taking on Alex Semon's contract is if the 5th pick overall is in play. Not to say you have to trade the 5th pick overall to take Alex Semon, but maybe a deal where a team moves up to number 5 from a lower pick, and
you have to also take Semin, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that isn't going to happen.
That's not the worst case scenario.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
He's not awful. That's for sure.
He's
a lot of mud on a team that doesn't do anything.
He really is awful. He's talented, but he is awful. Depending on how you define awful.
Semon.
Yeah, Semon is awful. Yeah. I think we can reach a consensus on that.
Yes, he's got great talent.
He's highly skilled, but he's awful.
Yeah, I heard a well-known hockey reporter refer to him as soulless, Kevin. And that's the perfect description. Soulless. Yeah.
Well, he definitely has been stealing money in Carolina. That's for sure. And that I don't usually use that term with hockey players, because I don't think most hockey players are stealing money. But that's a stealing money situation if there ever was one. But since we have Peter here today, I really wanted to get the Winnipeg scenario here, Peter, because we haven't talked a lot about Winnipeg lately. Sure. What are your thoughts going into the draft? What do you see them doing coming into UFA Day?
Well, I think we know that Michael Frolik has pretty much left the building, and is.
So. That's surprising. I thought they were going to get him done. I thought they were going to get him back.
They had 2 years. They had a year to get it done.
Yeah.
And my sources, one of which is extremely close to Frolik, has said the Jets haven't countered with an offer up until we heard that Chevy was going to talk to Alan Walsh again before the draft, or before a UFA period. And that the money was almost identical to what he made this year.
Okay.
So that's, if I'm Michael Frolik, I say, yeah, I'm going to test the market. From a draft perspective, they've got 2 picks, 17 and 25. Something tells me that they want to have discussions and say, who needs a draft pick to get rid of someone to help with the salary cap? And there may not be a better opportunity for Kevin Cheveldayoff right now to use 2 decent draft picks in the deepest draft that we've maybe seen since 2003 and parlay that into a player and give another team a little bit of help. I don't know if he will, but the one thing I always come back to, and I put this in my blogs about 6 times, is that Chevy had a quote after the trade deadline and said, there were a number of conversation ideas that I said I'd like to revisit later. So there were things presented to him at the trade deadline that didn't make sense then, but that he knew he had to revisit and wanted to. And I think that's very telling, particularly because at that point they all knew he had a second first-round pick because he'd already traded Kane. So it was just a matter of what pick it was going to be and who he was going to move. But he's got 4 players, including Toby Enstrom, who are all going to be 30 or more when their next deals, or at some point next year, and that includes Andrew Ladd, Dustin Byfuglien, and if they re-sign Drew Stafford, which most indications are that he will be re-signed or that they're trying to. So that's 4 guys now over 30 or over, coming into next season. And 3 of those guys are part of your core, your leadership group and your core team. Does he have to address the age gap? And does he want to pay someone like Dustin Byfuglien? What some people and talk around here is that someone may pay him $6 to $7 million a year on his next deal.
I think so.
Oh, for sure.
And that's a lot of money to play a guy who he is probably on the downward slope. And if you look at all the players since 2000 who have produced like Dustin Byfuglien did last year, this past season, and what they did over the age of 31, it's a pretty elite list of names. I don't know if Byfuglien falls in there. I mean, that's what they have to figure out. Is he capable of being that kind of player who can carry it on into his 30s? From a UFA point of view, I honestly, it's always quiet here. No one hears a thing. The whole organization is in lockdown mode. You can talk to some of the beat guys here away from social media, and they don't even know a thing. It's complete quiet. I mean, the only news we have anything on is that Chevy's meeting with Mike Liu to talk about Alexander Remistrov. That's it. I mean, it's a complete blank. But he has cap space. He's a financially sound owner, and he has draft picks, and he's got some depth. He's got all the ingredients to make some deals now in terms of prospects, draft picks. I think he's going to. I just could not tell you what it's going to be.
And not just prospects. I mean, we're talking Ehlers and Patan and Morris. We're talking premium prospects, which to me, Peter, means I think they're more likely to trade guys like Byfuglien out a year prior to get more assets or to get players that can help them now and that they can hold on to for longer than a year, and then start to bring these prospects up. I mean, I don't think Ehlers and Patan are too far away from making the NHL. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah, there's a very strong indication. Ehlers put it on Twitter that saying thanks to Halifax Mooseheads, I'm leaving, and that's it. Like, somehow he knows that he won't be back to Halifax, so he's either playing in Winnipeg or he's playing in Europe as a professional because he can't play in the AHL. So that's a very interesting sort of development too. And one of the things that came up is that he's listed as a left wing, but he played on his offside most of last year. He is, he can play right wing, and the Jets have a right wing hole.
I mean, my thought I was trying to say there before I was sucked into a vortex by Google was that I might be going any other minute now. Apparently, I've wronged someone in the internet. We had a ton of storms here. There's a lot of people who don't have electricity, so I'm sure that's what's going on here. I'm facing what Kevin faced yesterday.
Yep.
And we just lost that.
We just lost him again.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll wait for him to come back to end the show. But Kevin, I don't think there's going to be any major trades today because you're going to have the NHL awards, and I think the Board of Governors meeting is today, and then everybody flies to Sunrise tomorrow. I think if any pre-draft monster deals are going to happen, it'll be tomorrow. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that it's going to wait till the draft floor?
Well, I think we could see something Friday morning too. I think there's sort of an artificial deadline. You want something done because generally these big deals are going to involve, first-round picks. So, you got until the afternoon to get something done, and I expect something to happen. I've joked around with GMs about, that it's all on them, that the pressure's on them to produce for this television show because we're all expecting something big.
They gotta have a sense of drama here. That's what I want to see. I mean, before we go, and this is the last thing I'll leave everybody with before I'm sucked out again, is that, and I appreciate your patience today. Somehow the show went very smooth because you guys ran it perfectly well. Thank you so much. We always, before the trade deadline, we go in there and we try to predict how many trades are going to happen. So I thought it'd be fun today to do a pre-draft trade, prediction on how many trades are going to happen. So starting this point, from this point forward.
From this point forward,
Okay.
how many trades will happen before the first pick in the draft? Let's just say that. That's I'm interpreting what Ack was going to say.
Okay. I'll start. I'll go with 6.
Okay, 6. Peter, how many trades do you think? This is minor or major. I mean, could be,
Trades before the first pick is announced at the draft. I'm going to say 4.
I'll go right in between. I'll say 5, and I think at least one will be of major consequence, meaning Patrick Sharp or Kessel or somebody of that nature.
Yeah.
I finished the question. I said how many.
Thank you.
How many trades would happen before the first pick was announced? Kevin said.
Oh no. The question was not that. Sorry. The question is how many trades will happen between now and the end of the draft.
Oh.
Because I want to hear. I want trades to happen.
There's always a bunch of little perch too that.
We read the same thing for deadline. We have to deal with the same issue, right?
Yeah, I'll go 10.
10, okay.
Peter,
I'll go 12.
I'll be the optimist. I'll say 19.
Oh.
Wow.
I think there's going to be a lot of trades. Could be, move up, move down with picks, but I think that there's going to be a lot of.
Well, if you're counting those, I think there will be a lot of those.
Yeah,
I just thought if anybody trade, like it had to include an NHL player in it.
We could define it either way. I'm wearing these glasses because so far it's helping my reception. Let's see.
What?
So let's see. How should we count it, Kev? What I mean, you're the.
Well, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to say all trades, then
Let's say I think player trades. Let's start again. Let's go NHL.
It has to include one NHL player.
Has to be one current NHL player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll stick with 10.
You're gonna stick with 10. All right, Peter.
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with 12.
Okay.
I'll come down to 13.
Okay.
In honor of Matt Sundin.
I am going to go off the board here and say 4.
Okay.
And I think that goes totally against what everybody's been saying so far, but I have this weird feeling that it's going to be less, and it just.
and we lost Eck because he couldn't carry on the webcast with those green-colored glasses. Jeez.
Well, it must be fun in the vortex where he's going.
Oh my goodness.
Going back there.
Yeah, well, I'll just carry on here till he comes back and ends the show because he has to end it. But I think that there will be one major deal either tomorrow or Friday morning. I think that I know that the impetus there, especially in Toronto, regarding a deal for Kessel or something of that nature is there, and I think they want to get something done before the draft starts. So, Eck, why don't you just end the webcast before?
Yeah, I'm going to end the webcast here because I'm afraid that Google's going to attack me at any moment. So I'm going to go with my I'm going to go like this. I'm just going to put on my Pele Littenberg mask, and we're going to end it from here. And guys, enjoy the draft. We will have some kind of a show tomorrow at some point, probably in the afternoon, early evening-ish type hours, because we're all going to be arriving around the time we do a show normally. So, and then on Friday before the draft for sure. So, guys, remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. Talk to you soon.